So again, thank you so much. Before I start my presentation, I would like to thank the organizing committee for inviting me present my study about Bishop Gainza's Colección de Sermones en Bicol. Actually, this study is from my book history class, and ever since after I graduated from my master's, it's still undergoing countless revision as I attempt to improve the study's direction. So allow me to share my study. First, let's start with the definition of hulit. So hulit is defined as the doctrine, teachings, or admonitions. Nahulit or naghulit, to teach or instruct or admonish. According to the early Bicol lexicography, the word hulit as a noun and a verb uses indoctrination and correction. As a noun, hulit denotes doctrine, teaching, or reprimand, while its verbal definition, maghulit or nahulit, refers to the act of instructing or correcting. The semantic framing of the word hulit reveals the imperative act that equates spiritual teaching and moral discipline, instruction, and punishment, further suggesting that the language of preaching in Bicolano encodes authority and correction within the vernacular. The linguistic link between teaching and correcting in Bicol can be traced back to Father Marcos de Lisboa's Vocabulario de la Lengua Bicol, who early missionary lexicography combined evangelical teachings and colonial disciplines. When the Most Reverend Francisco Gainza arrived to assume the see of Nueva Cáceres in 1863, he addressed the challenges of Christianization in the region. He justified in his Prologo Pastoral that publishing the collection of sermons is necessary because of the grave neglect of local parish priests in delivering the weekly spiritual lectures or platicas to the native population. He notably ordered to republish the Vocabulario de la Lengua Bicol by Fray Marcos de Lisboa in 1865 along with the other religious texts in Bicoliana. The lexicographical intervention through the dictionary provided a sharpened semantic understanding among priests, thereby paghuhulit becomes anchored from the mother tongue of the natives, and abstract theological concepts are no longer abstract but within the reach of their comprehension and bound to their spiritual salvation. This educational and religious initiatives further situates Bishop Ganza's efforts within the broader context of the educational system of Cáceres. In Javier Leonardo Crujeria's study on the establishment of the Colegio de Santa Isabel as a part of Hispanization of the Diocese of Cáceres, he suggested that his efforts to expand vernacular religious instructions were related to the colonial project of Hispanization. In Rujeria's formulation, Bishop Gainza may be understood as a religious administrator concerned with the effectiveness of Christian instruction. This context is important to the present study because the sermons can be understood as part of this educational and evangelizing instrument. The sermons in Bicol did not only make Christian concepts accessible and comprehensible to the natives, but enabled colonial religious knowledge to propagate in the language community itself. In the study, A Grammar of God, Translation, Grammar, and Memory in the Arte y Reglas de la Lengua Tagala, Marlon James Salas assumes that God manifests in language, implying that there are many possible reiterations of God in language despite the homogenizing tendencies of proselytization. The study demonstrates that how translational devices in the arte transfer Christian religious vocabulary into a language that the natives understand. This supports the notion that grammar and translation are closely intertwined in the production and transmission of Christian knowledge. In the context of this study, this relationship provides understanding on how missionary lexicography and vernacular religious texts did not simply translate the texts, but solidify theological concepts through the linguistic and semantic praxis available to natives. With the sorry. With the semantic groundwork established through the vocabulario, the transition from lexicography to homily is most visible in how the Colección de Sermones en Bicol negotiates the divine through vernacular terminologies. Thus, my intention in this study is to lay the analytical framework for understanding this colonial homiletic as a site of hybridity. By using the Bicolano notion of paghuhulit, I contend that the sermon is not merely a lesson that intends to teach biblical and spiritual doctrines, but a linguistic mechanism that combines indoctrination and social admonishment. The framework builds on two tasks. It interprets the inaugural sermon structure, rhetoric, and tone by drawing from post-colonial concepts of mimicry and ambivalence. And second, it examines how rhetorical and linguistic techniques from the Christian doctrine are imitated, negotiated, and merged in translation to resonate with native expressions and beliefs. First off, let's talk about the anatomy of the sermon. The Colección de Sermones en Bicol is not only a religious text, but an institutional force that imposes ideology and authority. While Father Pedro de Avila, from the town of Canacman, was attributed as the writer of the sermons, it was Bishop Francisco Gainza who functioned as the authoritative patron and institutional force. Bishop Gainza commissioned the Establecimiento Tipográfico de Santo Tomas in Manila to publish the collection in 1866. This hierarchical stratification of relationships between writer and publisher demonstrate the top-down approach to rectify the grave neglect of the clergies. To map the structure of the inaugural sermon, the text is divided into two distinct rhetorical parts that moves listeners from the Christian dogma to real-world narratives. The first part functions as the theological foundation that establishes an intertextual dialogue between the Gospel to the Old Testament. The sermon opens with King David's anxiety of being forsaken by God. This thematic register would establish the succeeding narratives to show what happens when the human soul, when God turns his back on his children. The preacher associates this to Maria, who is the devotional model of faith. In the liturgical theme, the child Jesus was lost in the temple. That the writer translates it into a spiritual warning of the soul's alienation from God because of committing sin. To quote a part of the sermon, it says, "Tara kaining siring nagibo ni Santa Maria, hinuhulitan kita kung paanuhon ta ang paghanap sa Dios, kung mawara sa tuya, huli sa satong mga kasaklan." That Maria's action teaches us how to search for God when we lose him because of sin. Finally, the rhetorical tension culminates when the preacher introduces Pharaon, pursuing the escaping Israelites as an allegory to the occupation of the unguarded soul by the demonyo. Thus, the first part of the sermon is a progression from the internal horror of being abandoned by God to the domestic grief of a mother losing her child, and ultimately to the external threats of sin with institutional penance as the viable resolution. The second part of the sermon is formally called Usipon, or story. This section bridges the high theology, let me drink my water, and grand biblical figures to the relatable characters who struggle with worldly temptations. The Usipon introduces a relatable archetype, a person who succumbs to worldly temptations and drove away the presence of God due to his terrible sins, or makuring kasaklan, that his soul becomes a dwelling place for the devil. The resolution takes place within the confines of the church, with the sinner's deliverance achieved through the devotion to the Virgin Mary and praying of the rosary beads. The Usipon delivers a formulaic moral lesson that directly speaks to the institutional power of the church. Excuse me. Translation as a non-neutral transfer of meaning becomes a process of conversion, where belief and ritual is enacted through the reorientation of language itself. Following Raphael's argument that the nature of translation in colonial manuscript is ambivalent, sermons also enact what Homi Bhabha calls mimicry. In his book, The Location of Culture, he defined mimicry as a sign of double articulation, which refers to the appropriation of the other as a subject of a difference that is almost the same but not quite. In the Colección de Sermones en Bicol, mimicry is observed into how Catholic rhetoric and doctrine were translated into the vernacular. While the sermons were generally written in the vernacular, the preachers heavily uses untranslated Latin taglines throughout the text, mimicking European ecclesiastical authority to signal to the native listener that spirituality originates from an external imperial center. The sudden interruption of Bicol narrative prose with Latin verses functions as structural mimicry. For example, this one, ano nga ya ining kagurangnan ko, masain ka. Ano ta minadulag ka sa mahal na tabernakulo na iniidkan mo. Iyo ito suminiring sa iya ang kagurangnan tang Dios, kaya ngaya ako nagbabalik, isinubol ako nindakan sa indang mga kasaklan. Maray di mo nakikita ang mga gibo kaining mga tao, kaya huli ka iyan, naghahali ako. And then the Latin tagline, Fili homines putasne, vides tucid isti facion, abominaciones, magnas quas domus Israel facilhic, and etc. The writer-preacher follows a formulaic European homiletic model. It demonstrates that the local tongue is insufficient to express the importance of divine intervention. Since Latin remains inaccessible to the colonized subject, its usage creates a regime of mystery and hierarchy, signaling that the sacred language is far too elevated for native comprehension. The inaugural sermon was far from seamless delivery of Christian dogma, but conveys a bifurcated structure. The rhetoric uses an authoritative tone through Latin liturgical intertextuality to mirror the European models of spiritual alienation, with the sermon's warnings that without the church, the native soul is likened to an empty and defenseless sanctuary waiting to be occupied by the demonyo. Tara isinisubol ta kung nagkakasala kita sa iya, asin pagkahalin ni Diyos, iyon minaerok sa to ang demonyo. This hybridizing of Christian sin to native beliefs extends to the worship of anitos. Tara lumaog ang santo propeta, ipinagpaglabot sa iyan sarong lanog. Nakita niya sa laog ang dakol kalain-lain na mga gibong maraot ng mga tao, asin ang pagsamba sa mga anito. In referencing Ezekiel's vision, the writer-preacher translates the sin into the worship of nature spirit, revealing an ambivalence where the colonizer's sermon must constantly name and battle the presence of indigenous practices that persist under the surface of conversion. Pagtaliling as domesticating of divine alienation. Kagurangnan kong Diyos, hari pagtalilingan sa kuyaan sa imo mahal na lalawgon, asin hari ako kaanggote. Vicente Rafael's book, Contracting Colonialism, produced a compelling argument on the process of the indoctrination among Tagalogs. Rafael's theoretical insight is informed by how translation requires the conversion of language to disseminate faith. In the cited quote, the Bicol word taliling, to look away or turn one's face in anger or disgust, was used to translate the theological concept of damnation. It negotiates the doctrine through framing divine rejection as a familiar alienation from an authority figure. Paghidaw as an indigenous emotion of piety. Kaya man sa maghapon na sinda paglakaw, hinidaw na ninda si Jesus ta pinagkakaataman ninda, kaya nagbalik sinda sa Jerusalem, natulong aldaw na pagparahanap ni Santa Maria kay Jesus. When God distances himself from men, paghidaw was used to express a deeply intense emotion of profound longing or missing someone deeply, like when Mary lost her child Jesus in Jerusalem. The writer used emotional semantics to connect distant biblical figures to culturally specific feelings of grief and longing. Mary's weeping teaches the natives how they must behave when they realize that they have lost God due to their sins. In conclusion, Raphael argued that translation and conversion appeared to be necessarily related, setting and sustaining the conditions for a history of conquest and salvation. In this sense, conversion through translation involves transmitting Christian document while reshaping consciousness and social relations of the natives. The Colección de Sermones in Bicol precisely operates within the framework of translation and conversion, anchoring spiritual alienation or local familiarity to localized emotional registers, reengineers Bicol affective landscape. In extension, it did not only function as a spiritual illumination, linguistically, it extends as a disciplinary apparatus.